the Success is Subjective podcast series brought to you by the College Parent Survival Network, presented by Lilly Consulting. I'm your host, Joanna Lilly. In today's episode, I had the pleasure of interviewing both Josh and Maureen White. Josh is the co-founder and executive director of Red Mountain Sedona and Red Mountain, Colorado. He earned his master's degree in psychology from Naropa University, which is the nation's premier mindfulness-based therapeutic training institution, in 2002, and has had a long and distinguished career as a recognized leader and innovator within the adolescent and young adult treatment field since. He is a licensed professional counselor, a licensed clinical mental health counselor, and a certified group psychotherapist, and he has presented nationally at over 40 behavioral health conferences, all of which you can read listed on the Red Mountain Sedona website. After beginning his career with adolescents and young adults as a martial arts instructor in 1994, Josh shifted his focus to behavioral health in 1998, serving as both a behavioral health technician and a master's level clinician before becoming an administrator in 2005. In addition to his clinical work, Josh has served as a program director, clinical director, and executive director in top treatment programs for adolescents and young adults. He is a proud husband and father whose greatest joys in life are his wife, Maureen, and their teenage son. Josh is also an avid guitarist and former professional musician who opened for Run DMC, Vertical Horizon, Edwin McCain, and the Violent Femmes. When he's not spending time with his family, staff, and students, he enjoys hiking in the beauty of Sedona and the Front Range, playing with his dogs, seeing live music, building and playing guitars, and competing in and occasionally winning Red Mountain Sedona's long-running fantasy baseball league. Now, there's a ton of other things that I left out about Josh, so you just have to go to the website to read about his accomplishments and interests. Now, Maureen is also the co-founder and executive program director for Red Mountain Sedona. Maureen earned her master's degree in psychology from Naropa University, too. She is known for her ability to combine penetrating insight with humor and warmth. She has worked with young people and their families since 1996, helping countless parents and young adults to resolve long-standing issues and move into new places of abundant love and peace. Maureen speaks Spanish and has taught internationally. Maureen is a sought-after trainer for businesses seeking to learn mindfulness-based organizational management strategies, and for 7 years, she's led transformational 3-day workshops at a transition program for young women. An authorized meditation teacher, she has served as core staff for multiple meditation retreats and worked with hundreds of adolescents and young adults at the apex of therapy and mindfulness practices. Maureen is also a member in good standing of the International Association of Eating Disorder Professionals. She is a fully authorized 5 Wisdom Energies instructor from the 5 Wisdoms Institute, as well as a brain spotting practitioner. Now, Maureen is currently pursuing her doctorate in psychology, and after a long and distinguished career, she is thrilled to be a student again, as she loves to learn and enjoys bringing cutting-edge modalities into the Red Mountain programs. I really enjoyed this interview. Whew, this is like a mouthful just for the intro, but let's not wait any longer. Here's Josh and Maureen. All right, I'm super excited because today's guest is a very entertaining and humbling duo, and I will let them introduce themselves here in a second. But Josh and Maureen, I'm super excited to have you here. We're going to dive right in. Where did each of you grow up? And what were you hearing from your immediate kind of family unit about post-secondary education? And then same for the messaging that you were receiving from the community in which you were raised.
Well, I grew up in New England, mostly in the Boston area. The messages that I heard growing up were mostly around sports being really important, and that if you really like someone, you'll give them a hard time, and that if you're cold, you are weak in some way. The long New England winter, no one wants to hear that you're cold. Yeah, pretty much, root for the Red Sox, don't complain about anything, and if I'm giving you a hard time, it's because I love you. That's pretty much what I learned culturally growing up. How about you?
That explains so much.
After 18 years, she's just hearing
the
it.
light bulb went off. I know. Do light bulbs go off? Light bulbs and alarm bells.
I hope not too many alarm bells.
So I'm from Colorado. I'm from Boulder. And then I lived in Minnesota. It's the Twin Cities from 8 until I was like 14 or 15. Hard to remember that. But I really feel just 100% like a Colorado person. Outside is really important. Sports, very important. Skiing being, sort of the most important thing. I grew up with a lot of horseback riding and, horses were very important. Mm-hmm. Messages of success had a lot to do with really appearance and athletic prowess. And we were just expected to do well in school. That wasn't ever a question. Like there was never, is she struggling? The emotional world was not at all important. My father's from Ireland. So the emotional world is like, what are you crying for? That kind of thing. So
rub some dirt on it.
Well, and those are, we're talking about 3 different, let's factor in the European influence, right? You're talking about 4 different factors kind of cluing into also the pressure that you may or may not have been receiving or hearing around post-secondary education. So in addition to saying we're not talking about emotions or your social, or we're focused so much on, what sports you're playing or hey, just, again, kind of mum's the word about you being cold in New England. Everybody's cold, right? So I'm kind of curious what messages you were also receiving just around when you're an adult. What does that look like? Do you go to college? Do you not go to college? What is that?
I definitely there were strong assumptions that I would go to college. I remember one time making sort of this throwaway comment to my father as a 16-year-old, as we all do when we're 16 and trying to differentiate. And it was something to the effect of, who knows, maybe I won't even go to college. And he just, just like harumphing and making all this noise. And I said, do you want to use your words? And he said, if you were to not go to college, it would be the waste of a brilliant mind. And I said, okay, noted, but it was just assumed, and, my dad went to Harvard and was a Rhodes Scholar. So, I think he had a particular bent on that. I didn't feel a lot of pressure to do Ivy League or anything like that, but it was certainly assumed that I would go to college. What about you?
This is such an interesting question. It never occurred to me not to until I was there. And I started way too early. Josh and I both were in university at 17, which is way too young for me anyway, because I had never done any of the emotional stuff.
It's too old for me. I waited too long to go.
But it never occurred to me that I wouldn't go. And it's interesting because, my dad being from Ireland, he has 6 sisters, or he had 6 sisters, and he was the only boy. And my grandfather would keep one of his daughters. My grandmother died when my dad was about 9. So a girl would get kept out of school for the entire year to take care of the house and to take care of my grandfather. And that never happened to my dad. So none of my aunties on my dad's side went to university. All of them on my mom's side did, but I'm still in that generation of the women's lib thing of of course you're going to college. Of course you're going to pursue advanced education. It was never a question. Mm-hmm.
Also, another thing, and real quick too, just a flavor in the soup, is that my dad's first book came out when I was 10. So I think there was also a certain amount of assumption that I would contribute in some way. And again, not pressure from him and nothing overt, but just kind of, I am yet to publish a book and I'm 44. So when that happens, which is, the wheels have been in motion a few times and it hasn't quite manifested, but I know that it will.
He's written 10.
Well, not quite that many, but there's definitely, I think there was a message from, seeing him get the amount of attention he got and being interviewed by Terry Gross on Fresh Air and going on book tours and people asking for his autograph, that there was certainly a certain amount for me of like, that's when you know that you're really someone, is when that's going on.
That's
And
why you
so-
had that little Terry Gross crush too. That explains.
Also,
again,
she's
explaining so
amazing.
much.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I remember he did that interview from our home, and I remember sitting there listening as he was talking to her.
Wow.
But yeah, so I mean, I think there's a certain amount of you're going to college, and you'll probably write some books and make a mark in some way. And my dad now frequently says that I've surpassed him just because of what we've done with, you know, the Red Mountain programs and our mark in the world and helping people. But I think I'll always feel a little asterisk to that until there are books out with my name on them. You know, that's just sort of an interesting little piece of, I don't know, something around what success is that I think that I internalize, that maybe it's coming more from me than from him.
Well, and I can't wait to dig into that interpretation, right? Like both of your ingrained perspectives, definitions, and what creates those definitions based on kind of the nature versus nurture, or geographically where you were raised, what success looks like. And so we'll dig into that here momentarily, but for the time being, I really want to actually talk to, let's not overlook this, because I'm curious what your college experience looked like, not into the weeds of like, who were you living with and like, what were you studying per se, but just the overall transition into higher education. I know you both alluded to being really young, so that kind of plays a role in that transition to begin with. But, you know, how was college for you? And then let's actually start to tee up with those chapters of life, those employment experiences leading up to how you both met, and then what you're doing now, because I want to make sure we have plenty of time to do the shameless plug for the work that you're collectively doing. But I think it's also important to just make sure that we're talking about how your emerging adult years were for you.
Totally.
Garbage. I mean, no, seriously, like going across the country to college at 17, horrible, bad idea. I had spent part of my senior year of high school, because I was really finished with all my requirements, in Ireland, where there is no drinking age. So I'm definitely got a good start on that, on the whole, you know, partying thing. I was a pretty innocent kid until then, well, fairly. But then, you know, going off to college, I'll just cut to the chase and say it took me 10 years to graduate from college. I had to, my mom asked me one day to see my passport. And so I said, oh, sure, Mom, I'll go get it for you. And I gave it to her, and she took it and she locked it up. And that was the only way that I was ever going to graduate from college, because I had some major trauma to work through. Although back in those days, we didn't know what it was. So I just thought that I was problematic and didn't understand anxiety and depression and all of that. So I would go to school for a little bit and be too anxious to go to class and drop out, and then go travel and then try again. And finally I accomplished it. And when I was ready, you know, when I'd worked through quite a bit and had a much better understanding of some of the underlying obstacles that were occurring. But I mean, I say garbage just in terms of my university experience, but you know, my life, I've needed every single thing that has ever happened to me. I've needed in the path of my life. So no regrets, you know, not major regrets anyway, but how about you?
Well, first of all, I just have to note that when you say you don't want to get too far into the weeds of my college years, there's different ways that word can be taken.
Are you making a drug reference?
Well, I would never be so crass as to make a drug reference, but she asked about weed. So I was an M&M artist, and my big claim to fame is that while I was in college, we had the big band on campus, and we had songs on the radio at our college radio station, and we never signed a recording contract or anything, but we were the big fish in the small pond. And so whenever every year there was a big festival at my college, and we would always open for whatever big national band came. So Vertical Horizon came one year, and Edwin McCain, who is known as the I'll Be guy. Yeah, that guy. He came.
Violent Femmes.
Violent Femmes was like the big one. And then the really incongruous one, because I don't do hip hop, was Run DMC. Like we were open for Run DMC.
And that was what got me when you told me that.
That I opened for Run DMC.
Absolutely.
You were all about it after that. Yeah. So lots of music, lots of bad poetry, lots of
lots of feelings.
Pretty adrift. I also had pretty heavy trauma as a kid, and trying to work through all that. Also really close friendships. I had gotten into martial arts in high school, so I did that all through college and grad school, and that's actually how I supported myself. So I had my master's degree by the time I was 25, so I was a little different than Maureen in that I was pretty driven and like knew that I wanted to be a therapist. And I remember toward the end of college, I did have this moment of like, do I want to do music or do I want to do psychotherapy? Of course, all my musician friends are like, you definitely chose right. But then when I see my musician friends playing big concerts, and when I am up in the middle of the night dealing with crises at our program, I'm like, I don't know, like maybe. But no, I definitely felt a calling to help others, and I had been through so much in high school and into my college years, and therapy helped me so much that I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I also knew that I got into mindfulness through the martial arts, and I knew I wanted to do some kind of martial I mindfulness, Zen-based therapy, something, and preferably in some sort of healing community that I didn't know her yet, but that I would create. But of course, it turned out we created it, and it was kind of a no-brainer once we got together. So,
aw, this is what I'm supposed to say. Aw. You're listening to the Success is Subjective podcast, and I'm your host, Joanna Lilly. As a reminder, if you've missed any past episodes, you can catch them on Apple Podcasts. My guests today are Josh and Maureen White. All right, so we did just get to hear about, Josh, not only your undergraduate experience, but you had a clear vision of what it was that you wanted to do. And I like how you just threw in the age. Like, look, I had my master's degree by the age of 25. Not a lot of people go that route, or there are a handful that kind of have a clear idea of what they want to do, and they do it and they go get it very quickly. So Maureen, you had mentioned that it took you 10 years to get your undergraduate degree. So how did you end up getting to that place of figuring out what it was that you wanted to do? And I'm asking this too as a roundabout way of leading towards the meeting of Josh and Maureen, because I'm pretty sure if my memory serves me that you met in grad school. So I'm kind of curious for your journey, how did you end up kind of going down that path of clinical work?
Yeah. So I was at University of Colorado Boulder, and that's where I graduated. And I was a religious studies major, and I encountered a professor there named Reggie Ray, who was also one of the primary teachers at Naropa University. It was Naropa Institute at that point. And I had been traveling in Nepal and India and had started practicing meditation many years before, when I was about 19 or 20. And that's really the reason that I'm on Earth now, is because it definitely saved my life. Way before I ever encountered a good therapist. Because again, I'm 50, almost 54 years old. Back in the day, going to therapy was like not really a thing. I had friends whose dads were psychiatrists and things like that, but it wasn't really as accessible as it is today. There were, counselors and social workers and things like that, which they served a very different function than I think sort of the sit and talk therapy without medical intervention. So Dr. Reggie Ray, he encouraged me to apply to Naropa to the Master's in Buddhist Studies program. And when I started to investigate Naropa, I started to think, the thing that I've actually always done is be there for other people. And it's something I really enjoy. I really enjoy being present with someone in whatever circumstances. That's just something that I have felt a deep sense of purpose toward. And so as I was looking at Naropa, I thought about contemplative psychotherapy, which is Buddhist psychotherapy and, other contemplative traditions. So Eastern and Western traditions and theories merging into this really cool synthesis of how to be present with someone who's suffering. So I went that route. And then I thought it was not quite intensive enough for me. So I switched back to Master's in Buddhist Studies. And then, true to my nature, I went to Central America and ended up staying there, teaching school there. And
how'd you get your passport back?
I had graduated college, so I got my passport back. So it was like my graduation present, like, here's your passport. And what I realized when I was teaching school in Central America, I was living in Honduras, was that my office, even though I was a math teacher, which I'm not a math teacher. I taught math and writing, and I'm bilingual, so I could teach both English and Spanish writing. But my office was always full of kids, always. And in the off periods, they would come and hang out in my office and talk, and and I realized again, like, I'm kind of dense. I realized again, like, oh, this is what I actually do. Like, this is what I already do. So I left Central America, went back to Naropa, re-enrolled in contemplative psychotherapy, the Master's in Contemplative Psychotherapy program. And then a couple years later, along came this handsome fella. And we were just friends at first for a long time. And I'll let you take it from there.
We were friends, and I
can see him resisting the urge to tell jokes about things.
I don't know what you're
smell it.
Yeah.
He knows you well enough to know the look on your face when you're like, shouldn't say that.
This is a kid-friendly program. So the way that contemplative psych and Naropa, the way that I got to that was at my senior year at Guilford College. I was trying to figure out where I could go to graduate school where they would let me do a lot of independent study and integrating Zen into psychotherapy. And then this was, the nascent days of the internet. So I wouldn't have found this on the internet, but I was looking through a magazine and there was this ad for Naropa contemplative psychotherapy.
And it was my picture. No.
It was a picture of Maureen, and it was like, you can marry her. So, but it actually did have their website on there. And so I went over to the, the abacus in the student lobby at Guilford, because I didn't have, there was no internet that you could have in your room, or there was no cell phones. So I went and found on the computer there, the Naropa website, and it was just like a lightning bolt moment. It was like, well, I'm not even applying to any other grad schools. I don't need to forge my own path. They have this sorted out. This is the integration of Eastern and Western philosophies and models of health and how to make the brain and heart, function better. So, I was sold. I actually took a year off. I moved to Boulder. I was living with some friends from high school that lived out there. I was teaching in a private school, still teaching martial arts, teaching music. And I took a year off just because I think I knew, being as driven as I was, I think I knew my career was really going to start after I got my master's degree. And also I was about to take on a bunch of student loan debt. So I was like, well, before we do that, let's take a year. And it's kind of just interesting how things work out, because that decision meant that I was a year behind Maureen in our program. And the contemplative psych program at Naropa is a cohort. So it's 3 years of the same classes with the same people. There's no electives. There's no cross-pollination, anything. So
you get to know each other very well.
Yeah. And anyway, I won't go down into a bunch of digressions. The short version is we saw each other around the halls the first year. We didn't have any occasion to meet because we didn't have any classes together.
We did have meditation together every morning. But
no, once a week.
I thought it was every morning.
No, once a week.
I wonder I was always late.
You not only were you late, but you were absent 6 of the other days, apparently.
No, but Josh was a Zen student and I was a Tibetan Buddhist student. So he was always like in the front of the room, like super like ramrod straight. And I was always straggling in late, and I'd already practiced at home, and I was like, okay, I'll go practice with the amateurs now. So we each had our own version of being arrogant and kind of stuck up about the whole thing, which was nice.
I was always there first because in Zen, you're supposed to be on time. Anyway, so there was this visiting teacher the summer after my first year, her second year, who came, and because we were both nerds and hungry for the Dharma and hungry for the teachings, we both went. You know, it wasn't part of school per se, but it was at our school. And
it was on death.
It was.
Yeah, I know. I remember.
So I was there with a couple of my friends, and weirdly enough, my ex-girlfriend was also there, who I had dated that first year. And that was a bad plan, because when you're in a cohort where you're doing all the same stuff with all the same people every single day, and you start dating within that, and then you break up, it's no bueno. So I never did that. Yeah, right. So I was mildly heartbroken and sort of adrift. And after this talk,
one of my best friends was traveling with the teacher. So he was there from San Francisco, and I had started Naropa with him, and we were just thick as thieves, and so we were hanging out. And then Josh and his friend were walking down the hall, and I said, "You're Josh." Yeah,
those are the first words ever exchanged between us, was Maureen saying, and I remember the slightly different tone, "You're Josh." Like, Ray.
Future husband.
Hey there. So we ended up talking for quite a while after that, and all of our friends got annoyed and drifted away because we were having this enchanted moment. And she gave me her number, and I don't know, I waited a day or two or whatever the requisite thing is that single people do. I've been now married to her for so long, I don't remember. But, waited a day or two so it's not desperate, but not so long that she thinks you're not interested. Called her. Her outgoing voicemail was in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish. I would come to find out that she's fluent in Spanish, but no habla español. So I recognized her voice, and I left her a message, and I said, "I think this is Maureen saying things in Spanish, and I'm assuming that's just for fun. But anyway, this is Josh, and it was good hanging out with you, and let's get together." And I thought it was on. Like, I thought we were going to start dating, and it was on.
Oh, no.
But she didn't call me back all summer.
No, this is an exaggeration.
No, that's not an exaggeration.
It is, because it was towards the end of the summer.
Okay, well, at any rate, for the remainder of the summer, she does not call me back.
I was in Mexico.
And she then informed me that when I saw her again at the start of the new school year, that she had been in Mexico with her boyfriend that whole time.
He didn't count.
So, what's that Hemingway quote? I mean, anyway, he's not around anymore.
He's not you.
My point is that this began this dance that lasted years, where one of us would always be dating someone else when the other one was single. And there was this one party that my roommate and I had that she came to with her boyfriend, and my girlfriend was there. And we found out years later that we had both had this wicked fight with our significant others at the time after the party, because both of them had been annoyed that we had spent all night talking to each other and making jokes and basically ignoring them. So it was always meant to be. Yeah. And you fast forward 4 years.
Well, and we had a friend who was really working on trying to get us together too. So,
but we finally had this date where she kept trying to get me to go to dinner with her when I was still in a relationship after hers had fallen apart. And I was like, well, we can have coffee or lunch because we were friends. We're friends.
Know what that means. That means we're friends.
But I wasn't going to go to dinner. So then I asked her to dinner. And so we're out to dinner, and she's like, "So how's so-and-so, my ex-girlfriend?" And I was like, we broke up.
That's why we're out to dinner, not tea.
And she was like, "Really?" And I said, "That's why we're out to dinner. Hello." And I just saw the look on her face. She went like this. She was like, "Oh." And so ever since then, that was the end of that.
That was the end of that.
It weirded out all of our
1918, I don't know.
It was 2003.
Yeah.
So we had known each other for 4 years and had talked quite a bit, had talked and had coffees and lunches and whatever, been on retreat together, all kinds of stuff. So we felt we knew each other well, and we both had these relationships that had fallen apart that were sort of like, is this the person I'm going to marry? And so we were both thinking about, who do I want to marry and what are the qualities that I'm looking for? So to the outside observer, it was a very rushed because we started dating in November. We got engaged in February.
Well, both of us had come to the conclusion that it was okay not to get married.
Yeah.
I really was ready to be a mom. I mean, that was really kind of at the foremost of my mind. I didn't really think I was going to find anyone I wanted to marry.
You just wanted my DNA. So
you knew that.
And that worked out well because our son is awesome. But anyway, yeah. So we started dating in November. We got engaged in February. We got married in August, and we were pregnant by December. So 13 months from first date to married and pregnant. And the people around us, it was kind of like, what the hell? But we just knew. We just knew. And we were right.
We were so right. We have a friend who says that we could only be married to each other. And she knows both of us very, very well. She's like, you two could only be married to each other. I think she's right.
She's so right.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you shared that story because I think it actually tees up well, not just who you are personally, but professionally, right? It's so interwoven. Yeah. Like the solidity of the grounding of your union, and then what it is that you've created beyond that to this, and we'll talk about it here in a second. But Josh, it sounded like you had like maybe one more thing that you wanted to throw in there.
Oh, I was going to talk about how on our third date, we started talking about our vision for this mindfulness-based healing program. For me, it was for young men, and for her, it's for young women. And that really is where the germ of our current work started, I think.
Yeah, I've always wanted to work with young women and spent most of my career doing that. Half of my career doing that. And Josh really always wanted to work with young men and spent a big chunk of time doing that, although you've spent your time working with adolescent females as well. But yeah, I mean, that we both had similar but gender specific visions for what we wanted to do.
Well, and actually in this day and age too, we've ended up with the third category of people that don't identify as gender binary. Right. And we've developed some expertise and some skill around.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite populations to work with. So,
but at the time it was like, well, I want to work with males. You want to work with females.
They weren't recognized.
Let's join forces kind of,
Yeah, and the trans world was not recognized as openly as it is now. Not that it didn't exist, it just wasn't recognized and worked with in the lovely way that it's starting to be now. We're starting to catch up. Sorry, guys.
We now say that we're an all gender program. Yeah. We don't even say co-ed anymore because co-ed doesn't really cover the full range. But we definitely. Right. At that moment, I would say back in 2003, there was definitely a little, there was that lightning bolt for me when I found out about Naropa, and it just made sense. And then when Maureen and I got together and then coming to realize that she had an almost identical vision to mine, but just incorporating the other side of the gender coin, it was just really exciting because it was kind of, you try to explain to someone, well, I want to have this healing community where people can learn mindfulness and be very somatic based and do a lot of psychotherapy. And, it's young people trying to find their way in the world and this and that. And people are like, oh, well, yeah, that's cool. But Maureen was like, oh my God, me too. And now it's going to have this and this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, I have this.
I was just trying to make conversation.
She was like, the non is a little stale. I don't know. Maybe I should go back for Simosis. Yeah, he's cute. I guess I'll just humor him.
No, I really felt like there was this album that came out, Tony Childs. I don't know I think she's still around, but she had this album called House of Hope. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to have a house of hope for, young women who have been through things that other people couldn't understand that I would understand. So.
Yeah. And we refer sort of, half jokingly and very lovingly to Red Mountain as Hogwarts because it's sort of, that sense of people who haven't had their place and who are unique and special and different and gifted, but haven't had their place to kind of learn how to use their superpowers. And I think there was definitely that sense of, I mean, because we have both been through really heavy trauma as kids, and ostensibly we started out as a recovery program, but we've come to learn over the years really the underlying thing is, the recovery behavior is really coming, the non-recovery behavior is really coming from the trauma. And so, we really wanted to establish a place that first and foremost was really safe for people who had never felt safe before. And that's one of the most rewarding things, is we hear that a lot, is that people feel really comfortable and safe in the place that we've created. And that's awesome, and even sometimes they say that even based on not even knowing us that well, or when they're new, they just feel like everyone there cares about them.
And we really come from the Gabor Mate perspective of trauma, that really the predominant trauma of the industrialized world is not being seen, not really being seen for who you are, but sort of having these other things, these like what we started out talking about, success overlaid on top of you, or imputed and projected onto you, and sort of like, this is the course you must take. And that is sort of a soul level trauma. It's not big T trauma, but it's also not big T trauma, because it's the kind of thing that our inner little ones are like, what's happening?
Yeah.
I just want to be a unicorn and dance, and, not being allowed to do that and to have full expression of all the different things that we are, so really seeing trauma from that perspective of like, we're really going to see you. We're going to do our best to see you. And we're going to sit our butts down on a meditation cushion every day to clear away the dust of our lenses so that we can see you more clearly, and with increasing clarity as we get to know people. So when we talk about trauma, that really throws people for a loop sometimes when they think, well, I wasn't in a war, I wasn't in a plane crash or whatever. But, there are all different kinds of traumas.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you both this question, and I would love to hear your individual responses, because I asked this to every single one of my guests. Do you see yourself as successful?
Yes, I do. I see myself as successful because I have done what I think my soul's purpose was, and I'm not like I'm going to die tomorrow, knock on wood, but I have definitely been really brave in my life. And to me, that's a version of success. And I have this amazing life partner that I never dreamed I could ever have. And together we have built this life that, while sometimes may be really challenging in terms of the work that we do, heart-wrenching and exhausting and all of that, I am never without meaning in what I do in my life. Never. I'm not someone who's going to need to like consider as I get older, well, now it's time for me to give back to the world. I mean, I probably will continue to do that because it's what I'm here to do. But that and being a mom and feeling like we have a great relationship with our child, I have a great relationship with our child. Those are the things that are indicative of success for me, to me. But definitely courage, bravery, and really trying to live my life with my heart open. Thank you for asking the question. That's a really good question.
How am I supposed to follow that? Yeah, I guess I'm successful. Next question. I think for me, it's interesting. I say this with all humility, but the vision that I had for my life when I was a young adult and when I was first getting well, first getting into therapy and recovery and kind of envisioning what I wanted. And I've kind of touched on that I've always been pretty driven. I started doing martial arts and I wanted to get my black belt, and I, started studying Zen and wanted to be a teacher. Or, when I'm in therapy, it's like I want to become a therapist. It's just kind of how I've always been. And so at some point a year or two ago, I realized that everything that I'd ever wanted in my life has occurred. I have this long-term amazing relationship. And as the product of 2 broken homes as a kid, I always wanted that. I was also a little afraid that I couldn't have that or wouldn't have that because I hadn't seen it. But that's definitely happened. And, having a child, I always wanted a child, that's what we wanted. And our son is amazing. I wanted a dog growing up, and now we have 3. The black belt, the master's degree, the brown rakusu, the teachers, empowerment as a Zen teacher, clearing up a lot of wreckage from my past, not really have any problems with anybody today. That's all there. And I think certainly living in Sedona and having a beautiful environment around. So yes, I mean, definitely I feel successful. I think the things that nag at me are those interjects I mentioned around, being published or being more better known or whatever. And I do a lot of work with myself around, well, is that to do with some insecurity, or is that to do with really wanting to reach more people and help more people and being willing to be exposed in order to do that? So I think there's still things that I want to achieve, but the vast majority have happened. So I mean, I definitely think of myself as a successful person and as a very fortunate person.
So I'm going to follow this up then with, if you could give any piece of advice, and knowing that you work with so many young people, and not just the young adults themselves, but let's also loop into the larger family, because that pebble in the pond is having its own ripple effect by the young adults showing up at Red Mountain. If you could give any piece of advice to a young adult right now who might be struggling, and also open to interpretation how you want to read into that question or envision this particular person, but what piece of advice would you give that young adult?
Yeah, I mean, we do this every day. You're right. Working with the young people at Red Mountain. I mean, the thing that I see over and over and over again is that people underestimate what they can accomplish in a year, but they overestimate what they can accomplish in a day. And so, the main piece of advice that I would give any human, but especially a young human, is get with the program that every single thing you do has an outcome. So if you start a habit today and then you maintain it for a year, you're going to be in a way different place, whether that habit is going to the gym or eating better or being nicer to yourself or nicer to others or whatever. The other thing that's kind of interesting, one of my mentors said to me years ago, if I wanted to, 7 years from now, I could be a brain surgeon. We all have the ability in theory to manifest something new, even if it seems impossible. We went to Naropa for psychotherapy. We didn't learn about running a business until we started doing it, so you can really achieve way more than you think, but there's no shortcuts. And that's the good and the bad news. If there were shortcuts, you would manifest all kinds of things that maybe you would end up not wanting. But if you put that consistent effort in, there's no secret other than, put in the effort, you're going to have outcomes. And so I would just say, start where you are and figure out where you want to go, and do whatever actions today or this week that you can. And we do meditations around setting intention with our students. And that's very helpful too. Where do you want to be in, usually we do it Monday and Friday. So where do you want to be in 4 days? Where do you want to be in 3 days? And let's proactively create that so life is not happening to you. That was a long answer. Go ahead.
I think that was a really good answer. I misunderstood a Shakespeare quote. My mom was really, really big into Shakespeare. And so we were always going to see Shakespeare in theaters and, having some time in the Twin Cities, the Guthrie theaters there. And it was pretty amazing, and Shakespeare festivals and things like that. And I misunderstood Polonius in Hamlet. He said, "To thine own self be true." But what I heard was, "To thine known self be true." So I kind of took that and ran with it to really understand myself. And so, spending a lot of time meditating, 30 years at this point, and really making friends with myself and not hating myself anymore, which seems, if I think about talking to my 16, 17-year-old self, saying, like, you're not always going to hate yourself if you really try to make friends with yourself. It really would have changed my life to have someone say to me, "What about making friends with yourself? Like, you are curious about the people that you meet that you want to be friends with. Like, what do you like? What do you not like? What's your story?" So I would say the piece of advice that I would give to anyone who listens is make friends with yourself and travel.
I like,
if you can.
yeah, and travel. Like get those stamps in your passport.
Exactly.
Don't let mom get her mitts on your passport.
Don't ever let your mom get your passport.
Hide your passport for safekeeping. Okay, I really like both of your advice because it really is unique to who you are, but again, collectively what Red Mountain is really representing. So again, it's like my wheels are spinning as you're talking. How can people reach out to you? Because I know there's going to be a young adult or a parent is going to listen to this and they're just going to be really curious about Red Mountain and or just learning more about both of you and connecting with you. So how do people connect with you?
Well, shameless plug, we have a YouTube series called Mindful Moments. So you can look at that if you want to hear more from us around meditation instruction and how to apply mindfulness to your day-to-day life. And that's been a lot of fun. We also have, of course, 2 websites, Red Mountain Sedona and redmountaincolorado.com, respectively. I'm Josh at redmountainprograms.com. She's Maureen at redmountainprograms.com. Maureen.
And I will answer emails, even if I don't have the answer. I'll answer email and try to get someone connected to someone who can help. I've done that. We've both done that many, many times. If we don't have the answer and we're not the right person to talk to, we'll figure out, who to put you in touch with. So thank you.
I thought you had some outro music going, and then I realized that my phone was playing a song for us. So that was a fun little.
It was telling you that your appointment is like 5 minutes away. You got to go.
Yeah,
Well, and I appreciate that you did the plug too about your YouTube channel, because that's something that kind of that was one of the products of COVID, right? If I remember correctly, because I was kind of sitting in on some weekly meditations, and then it evolved into your YouTube channel, which has been really helpful. And so we'll make sure that link is also in the show notes, as well as your email addresses and the websites for the Red Mountain programs. I can't thank both of you enough for taking the time to talk about the work that you are doing. I mean, honestly, you are giving back, and it says a lot, and it's exciting for folks to also understand that your journeys were not linear. And so it's helpful for anybody listening to this podcast to see that and see where you are now.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to connect with you.
Yes.
I'm hugging you.
Great to see you, and thank you for asking.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their very personal story with the world. You can follow me, Joanna, on Instagram at Lily Consulting, and on Facebook at Lily Consulting LLC. Most importantly, though, check out the resources link on my website at lilyconsulting.com, and that's Lilley consulting.com, or you can just search on Google for Lily Consulting. You can also download and subscribe to listen to the Success is Subjective interviews on any popular podcast app, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you'll find contact information, website details, links to articles, and all social media for our guest. Thank you, our listener, for tuning in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.